You're listening to Under the Shell Podcast, the best in America.
Welcome to Under the Shell, presented by Testudo Times. I'm Brennan Weissel.
Sam Jane.
Michael House.
And here we go. We're going to bring on Shay Doron, who is going to be our big-time guest this week. Women's basketball. She played in Israel and was the first Israeli WNBA player. Shay gave a great interview. Take it away.
If you've looked up into the rafters at Xfinity Center, you've probably noticed the number 22 hanging up there. Well, that is the jersey of the 2006 NCAA champion, the first Israeli in WNBA, and just happens to be this week's guest on Under the Shell. Shay Doron, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Under the Shell brings back some good memories.
We know that you were born in Israel and grew up there, so kind of take us through the start of your basketball journey. I know you came over to the U.S. For a bit of high school, but tell us how it all started in Israel.
Yeah, I know you guys are super young, but back in the day, there was no social media at the time, and I was living in Israel, and my dream was to play in the WNBA, and the only way I could get to colleges was sending them VHS tapes, and they weren't even watching those, so kind of was super under the radar, and so we decided as a family to move back to the U.S. To finish high school so that I could get seen by college scouts and hopefully play at a good college. I went to the number one basketball school in the country, Christ the King out of Queens, which we were, I think, 8 out of 9 seniors went to Division I school. So super competitive, very, very good top school. And so kind of that's how we made our way and ended up being pretty good and got Gator Player of the Year and had my pick of colleges. And Maryland was not one of them. And honestly, the only reason Maryland jumped to my top 3 was after I met Brenda Fries. I met her and immediately bought into what she was trying to build and loved her energy and really believed that she could do it. And eventually we decided to take the leap together. I was her first recruit. And we really felt like we could do something different and bring the first title to Maryland, which was just kind of crazy that it actually came. But that's kind of how my path and my journey came through.
If you could take it back to when you came to the U.S. in high school, you said you came to high school and went in New York. I believe that was a Catholic high school or a Christian high school. Is that true?
Yeah, Christ the King, very Catholic.
What was that like, coming from Israel and being Jewish and then going to that high school?
It was hard for me in general because, even when I was younger, we were living in the U.S., my parents always wanted me to be in public schools and around a very diverse people, whether it's religion or skin color or whatever it may be. So it was a hard decision. But at the end of the day, we moved for me to achieve my basketball dreams. So it made sense that it would be the best basketball school. It put me in the best position to succeed. Overall, I don't remember anyone treating me differently. Sports has a funny way of kind of evening the playing field and allowing you to create friends and kind of be the cool kid. So it helped me out a lot. But yeah, I was super, super competitive at Christ the King. Everybody was competing for D1 scholarships, and the program ran like a college. So it was very intense and it got me prepared really well for college.
I read that you left your sister, so you moved from Israel to Texas, back to Israel to New York, and then back to New York, just moving around a lot. And then you left your sister to kind of try to utilize your basketball dreams. How much of a risk was that for you and for your parents, especially because it's not like basketball. I mean, Israel is, I know, very prides itself on sports, but basketball isn't this big thing there, especially for women. Were they skeptical, and how big of a risk was it, and what conversations did you have?
It was risky. We didn't understand if I was like a really good Israeli or a really good basketball player, like worldwide, right? That was the risk. Am I good enough to play at the next level and at the highest level in the US, where, the talent is just absolutely insane. So yeah, my sister stayed to serve in the Army. It's awesome. She's 2 years older than me, so she ended up staying for 2 years, and then we started college together. So it worked out pretty well on that end. She was amazing. She stayed by herself in Israel, let my parents come with me and help me, you know, achieve my dreams and goals. So um, forever grateful for her for giving up her family basically for 2 years to let me do that. Ultimately it was her choice, and she wanted, you know, it was kind of like a family dream, which is insane, and everybody was on board and wanted to help me achieve it. So so it was awesome. But yeah, it was a risk. We definitely didn't know. You know, I'd come for AAUs in the summer, and you know, I'd been pretty good, so I did have some type of sense. But at the end of the day, until you come and you do it day in and day out and you play against the top players and the top teams, you never know. And it was a tough transition. So my first summer out with the Liberty Bells, once I moved, I was pretty bad. The European game was quite different than the US game, and it took me a little bit of time to adjust. And yeah, there was a lot of doubt that crept in. It was like, well, did we do the right thing? And I missed my friends. You know, I'm a 15, 16-year-old kid. So it's like really hard life-changing decisions that we took there. And yeah, it was a lot of risk, a lot of question marks, but a lot of belief that if we were gonna fail, it would be fail trying, and not that unknown of, you know, not trying.
You mentioned coming over to the U.S. kind of in the summers. Where in the U.S. were you playing? Was it kind of all over the country? Were you playing with one specific team? Where was that happening?
So initially I played with the Silver Bullets. They're a AAU team. I don't know if they still exist, honestly, out in Long Island. I had an amazing mentor named Debbie Brajovic. I would fly in the summers, stay at her house all summer, and travel in cars and eat a lot of junk food from town to town, playing like AAU ball, 3, 4, 5, 6 games a day. Drinking Sprite on the bench. This is like really bad. Back in the day, like people were just so oblivious to what we should be doing and what professional athletes should be doing today. Obviously, things have been fixed, but yeah, that was my childhood. And yeah, she kind of gave me my first glimpse at, you know, U.S. ball and AAU. And then when we decided to move officially, then I did the summer with the Liberty Bells because most of my teammates from Christ the King were there. So I figured I might as well play with them, get to know them, and kind of build that chemistry. So we did that one summer as well.
And then you come over, you start getting recruited by colleges, and you obviously choose Maryland. But I know you mentioned that, you know, one of the first recruits for Freeze, and kind of what was her pitch at the time? You know, hadn't had that much success, but what was kind of the pitch to get you to come here? And, you know, obviously you win the national championship, but never could have known that at the time.
I mean, she didn't pitch it. She was just being herself, and pitching her dreams, like how she saw University of Maryland becoming a powerhouse. And obviously the facilities there and everything were in place to build a powerhouse. I was at it was Comcast Center at the time. I think it's called something else now, but we were literally in hard hats, walking in. It wasn't even ready yet. So when I took my recruiting visit, I was in a hard hat walking around the Comcast Center. So like the vision and the dream was like being built, like you felt it being built. And, you know, to me, it was like, okay, I'm a really good player. I've proved that. Do I want to be a really good player on really good teams and just be another name at a program? Or do I want to try to do something completely out there and take a program that's been really, really down for many years and try to bring it back to like national prominence? And so I'm the type of person that's like, I'm looking for a challenge. And when I'm not challenged, I'm super bored and unengaged. Not that I would be at a different program like Duke or Tennessee. I don't think I would, but I think that the extra added challenge of taking a team and building it, creating something that no one else has done, resonated. And again, she didn't pitch it. It was just, I was looking for a player's coach, and that's what I felt she was going to be for me. And yeah, and it helped that it was a little bit closer to home than some of the other ones, but it wasn't the ultimate factor. But it was nice that my parents could come see a lot of games.
Turned down Harvard, which is, I'm sure your parents were thrilled about.
And my dad still reminds me of that.
But I want to ask, you know, in terms of in those programs, Rafael, because obviously you get to the Natty, but it wasn't like that for a long time. You know, your first couple of years there, what were some of the hardest moments, you know, in terms of basketball, and then maybe off the floor too, like just, you know, having to adjust to collegiate basketball and college life? Because it couldn't have all been smooth sailing. What are some anecdotes that you remember?
Well, it definitely wasn't all smooth. First of all, the first year of college is like, it's really hard, right? You're learning at a high level. You are training at a double high level than what you're used to, and your expectations are high. And so these things are, they piled up for me. I missed home. Obviously, I think a lot of college kids go through that when they start. But the first, I don't even remember, just the time management was so awful. Like, I felt like I had not 1 second of life. Like, I was studying, and then I was at practice, and I had to study again. And then I don't remember like sleeping or eating. It was just like boom, 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 boom. And then, after you kind of get adjusted and kind of figure out how to manage your time, you kind of start breathing again. But until that happens, it was a really rough, especially like the first semester or two for me was super hard. We had 6 a.m. So it's like, you're up at 5, your social life is 0, and you're kind of like not enjoying college until you kind of get a hold of that. So it took me a really long time. On the basketball side, I think we did such a great job of like getting better every year. So that was like a really good compass for us to avoid these like really hard, mental breakdowns. A lot of, obviously injuries. My second year, I had a pretty significant one that a lot of people don't even know. It's like I sprained my AC joint, which I never knew what it was until I actually sprained it. But like I couldn't move my arm, and I couldn't even practice half the season. And just to play, like I would have to get just a shot in my shoulder to like even move my shoulder. So, like these things were super challenging. But I think overall basketball wise, we really, really felt like we were getting better, and we saw the recruits coming in were getting better, and we were able to close some major recruits, and that brought a lot of confidence to our path throughout my 3 years until we won it. So
on that team in 2006, we mentioned obviously win the national championship. Was there kind of sense from the beginning of the year that, you guys had made the NCAA tournament the 2 previous years, but hadn't gone past the second round? Was there kind of a sense that year might be different, or was there a sense at the beginning of the year that you guys were championship contenders, or what was kind of the feeling on the team then?
I think, every year we came in with the mentality that we were championship contenders. We just had to build to it. And so it was the same thing happened the third year. We felt like we had a ton of good pieces. And the question was, would everyone accept their roles within a team, right? A championship is won by a team. And sometimes it's really hard to build that chemistry and that camaraderie. I tell people a lot, like, I think on the day we won, I don't think we were the best team. But I definitely think we were the team that got along the best. And that kind of helped elevate us and take us to levels that we never knew existed and we never knew could exist. But yeah, the chemistry, didn't happen from day one. It took time. And, even for me, like I was, leading scorer and all whatever ACC and everything. And then we had 2 new rock star recruits, and, do I continue to be this like leading scorer and I don't care about anything else? Or like, do I give up myself? I'll score 12 instead of 17, but we'll be so, nobody can stop us, because if you go under this screen, then I score. If you go over this screen, she'll score, and kind of make us unstoppable. And like those things kind of developed over the season, where each of us gave up ourselves a little piece of, stardom or whatever it is. And slowly we became this like really cohesive team where we were not even caring about stats or anything like that. We just wanted to win. And we learned how to win. We learned how to win in super tough situations. I think that overtimes that we had so many of them, we gained a lot of confidence. And, when that happened in the championship game, when we finally made it into overtime, there was like absolutely zero doubt at that point. We had gone through so much and been through it so many times, that we just knew that it was like fate almost at that point.
So I want to ask is, when you got to the W, first round pick, obviously, but you weren't there very long. Take me through your experiences there. Because I read an article that, obviously you were frustrated with the lack of playing time, but what was the biggest adjustments that you had to go through, and what do you remember about your time in the league when it was still kind of in its, early stages, I guess you would say?
Yeah. I think I picked second pick in the second round.
Second pick, second round. Sorry.
Second round. The WNBA, like I got drafted to New York, which is a dream to play at the Garden and everything. And people don't understand, like I made no money in the WNBA. The money obviously has gotten a little bit better. But we were not chartering, we were flying economy. I was in a middle seat. Like I was a rookie carrying everyone's bags, which, didn't bother me one bit, but like it wasn't glamorous by any means, not in any way, shape, or form. And for us, the call it the better financial decision is playing overseas, is where we can, there's no cap and you can make your money and make a good living. And what ends up happening is you're playing year round. So I think in 2 years I had maybe 2 or 3 days off in a row. And so it was a combination of things. It was a combination of like, do I put my body through this, and what am I getting, as on the return side? And then on the other side was, okay, I told myself, listen, I wanted to get the WNBA to prove to myself that I was one of the best basketball players in the world. To me, that was like the stamp of approval. For myself, by the way, I never cared what other people thought, and I never allowed anyone judgments other than my own. Because I was actually never competing with anyone else. I was competing with myself. Like, how can I push myself further? So it helped me. That helped me a lot throughout my journey. But I think to me, that was like the stamp. I felt like I was one of the best players in the world. And, at the time, like you said, it was still early in the WNBA. There was no social media. There was none of that hype, none of the amazing things that are going on today in the league, which is amazing. I love seeing it. I love going to see the crowds. I got to see the WNBA finals this year, which was amazing. So it just wasn't what it was today. And to me, the price physically, mentally, emotionally, and everything else around just didn't add up for me. So I decided to take my summers off and travel the world, get better, focus on my health, mental and physical. And it was a hard decision because I'm a competitor, so I wanted to win a WNBA championship, obviously, and I wanted to play and I wanted to succeed. But when you put it on the scale of things back then, it didn't weigh for me. So it was a hard decision, but I took it. I was disappointed. I wanted to play more. Every player that's there wants to play more and thinks they should play more, and so it's always a disappointment when that stuff happens. But I look back at my career and I don't have any regrets, so that's always a good thing.
So I want to ask then, once you got to Israel, you obviously had a great career there, but I read that you mentioned on the team that you requested to play in a quote like more Israeli fashion, and when you didn't comply, you were kind of benched. What happened there? Like, take us through what that was like, and also what it came with playing in Israel.
So there was a lot of hype when I signed in Israel, and I came in with my mentality, my confidence, my style of game, which was a little bit more Americanized, a lot of one-on-one, really quick shots, quick offenses, fast breaks, a lot like super physical. And the European game had not yet gotten there. So when I brought kind of that mentality to the Israeli team as an Israeli, they felt like I was kind of overstepping. They were used to Israelis kind of, helping out usually there's 3 Americans on the team, and the Israelis are kind of on the support side of things and not leading. And I didn't know how to play anything but my game. So it was almost impossible for me to just stop playing my game. And so eventually they benched me. And towards December, we had a bunch of players leave the team. And while they left the team, I had to play, right? And I absolutely exploded, like in a good way. And I think I ended up that year is like, player of the year or Israeli player of the year. I don't even remember. Those things are so irrelevant to me that I don't remember them. But I had a really, really good season. And the team, at the end, said, please stay. We will build the team around you. We understand how, the mistake that we made, and that we, today, everyone plays like that. There's, I remember I was on a fast break and I took a jump shot 2 feet in the paint, and he benched me, and he's like, what kind of shot is that? We didn't run the shot clock. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We can run the shot clock 50,000 hours and not get a good shot like that. Like, what does it matter if it's with 18 seconds or with 3 seconds on the shot clock? And so that took time. It took time to get through, but eventually it did. And in Israel and in Europe, obviously, I had an amazing career, and I think people really appreciated my game and my worth. And it was a great feeling.
Was it tough, kind of, when you're balancing all those different types of play styles? You played at Maryland, you went to the NBA, and you played internationally, and played for the Israeli national team. And is it kind of tough balancing your game when you're with different coaches and with different players, and just having to adapt on the fly for seasons that aren't ridiculously long? Yeah,
it's hard. You look, every season is a new team, right? You have to learn new teammates. How does this player like to get the ball? How does this player think? New plays, new coaches, new mentality. Yeah, it's an adjustment every year. It takes time. I think for me, like when I started with a new coach, I would come to the coach. I say, listen, coach, I know I look like garbage the first month, but then something happens after a month where everything clicks for me. And just give me that month, give me time to understand the system, understand the players that I'm playing around. I'm not the type of player that would just come in and start jacking up shots. Like, I play within the game, and it takes time to understand the game that you're playing in, and the team that you're playing with. So these things, they take time, and that proved itself. Literally, like, it would take a month, and a month I would have like huge games, like 30-point games, 40-point games, 19 assists, crazy numbers. And it would literally happen a month and a half after the season, just like something just opened up and allowed me to play free. And that was just kind of learning the system and learning everything else around it that allowed me to do that. But yeah, it's tough. Everyone has to go through it, but it's tough. Not like college, where you get to play with a lot of the same players for many years, or hopefully many years. Today it's not that way, obviously, with the transfer portal. I don't think players, unfortunately, are not in it for the long haul anymore.
Yeah, the transfer portal has definitely changed that a good bit. I know you came back to Maryland. You've been back a bunch, but I know you came back, I think 6 or 7 years ago, and you talked about how, playing in college or playing in the NCAA for women's basketball at the time was kind of the most professional league you could play in for women's basketball, and kind of that environment. Do you still think that's true, or do you think the way that women's basketball has, changed and progressed since then, or do you still think the NCAA is kind of the most professional environment for women's basketball?
I think in many ways, what happened with monetizing college players and all the NILs and all the transfer portals, in many ways it kind of ruined the beauty of it. I understand. And of course, I would have loved to have made money in college. I think, we had this conversation when I was in Maryland, and we don't think we would have ever won a championship had the situation been the way it was, because everyone, was a good player, and, this player went there for that money and that. And so, college was basketball at its purest form, where you're committed. There's not much background noise other than let's win and let's get better. And that's changed a lot. So it's hard for me to say now what it's like. I thought that that's what it was. Also, the WNBA has made vast improvements. And I love seeing that. I think there's a lot more improvements that need to be made there, but I think they're heading in the right direction, where it's a league today that you can be proud to play in, and it's a league today that is, being seen and talked about and super prideful. So, there's obviously, it's not perfect, but there's strides made to do. But I think they're bringing in old, ex-players, and they're doing it right. They're doing it right, and they're going in the right direction. And that's what anyone could hope for, because that league needs to survive. It needs to be the best, and it needs to keep on improving. But yeah, college has changed, man. It's just not the same anymore.
What was your relationship like with Christy? And then take us through your reaction to the shot. I'm sure you've been asked this a bunch, but kind of want to know what was going through your head.
Christy and I in college were best friends, inseparable. We the whole team were seriously close. Like it's not something I'm just saying now. It's literally that, and some of them, I haven't spoken to in years, and if they asked me for a kidney, I would give it to them. So we were super close. I think at the time when they drew up the play, had they not have drawn it up for her, I would have said, no, we need to draw it up for her. Christy has proven to be one of the greatest shooters of all time that has ever played the basketball. So to have the ball in her hands, I wouldn't want it any other way, even though she was a rookie. Knowing Christy, she had ice in her veins, and that's kind of a moment where we all saw easily her shining in. So we had no doubt that ball should go to her. I didn't have time to think about the shot until after the shot. Seeing it on TV again and again, it's insane. Like Allison Bales is 6'7". If she puts her hand up, she's really, really, really tall. Not many people could take that shot. Not many people could make that shot without getting blocked. So it was just insane shot. It was absolutely an insane shot for a rookie, and the biggest stage, that anyone could ever ask for at that age. So, but it took time for us to understand the shot, because we were, the second it was over, I had to run back on defense, and you're not thinking about it. It's overtime. Okay, let's not be too happy. We got to win over. So it took us time to understand the magnitude of the shot. But once you see it on TV, you're like, how the hell did she make this shot? No one on our team, no one in the country could have made the shot other than her. It's absolutely insane.
So we gotta do this with every guest every week. We get a little rapid fire segment going. So kind of formulate quick questions and answers to kind of get the audience to get to know you a little bit more. So whenever you're ready, we can bang these out and then wrap it up.
Yeah.
All right. So where's your favorite place to play basketball?
Wow. I want to say Madison Square Garden, but also Comcast Center obviously brings some of the best memories in life. So there too. Tie.
What's your favorite type of shot?
Other than a free throw? I think a free throw a lot. I'm a jumper. That's my thing. In mid-range off the dribble jump shot.
Okay. Which country which spot that you've lived in has the best weather?
Israel.
What's your favorite spot in Israel?
Oh, there's so many restaurants and beaches. Anyone you choose is a perfect spot in Israel.
What's your favorite game from your Maryland career? And you can't say the Natty.
For the Natty, Sheesh, trying to think. We had a few good ones. I think when we beat North Carolina at North Carolina, the half-court buzzer shot from Ashley Newman. That one was pretty awesome. Another one, I think at Florida State, I told you guys I sprained my AC joint. That was the first game back. I hadn't moved my shoulder in a week, and got an injection, moved my shoulder, and then scored 40 points or something crazy like that. So it was and we won, obviously. It was a memorable, a good memory, bad memory, because 20 minutes after the game, couldn't move my arm again. It's pretty funny, but
yeah, exactly. What's your favorite type of Jewish food?
Oh, challah bread with butter.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna go kugel. So that's my go-to.
Short.
Yeah. What's the loudest place you've ever played in?
Fenerbahce in Turkey. We played.
Turkey goes crazy at her.
Crazy. We had police standing there with like these barricades, and they were throwing like I don't even remember, they screws and nails and all kinds of stuff. They kept having to stop the game, like remove nails and stuff from the floor. But yeah, it was crazy. Those Turkish fans are pretty crazy.
What's the angriest you've ever seen Brenda? Was it a game, practice? Is there any moment that stuck out to you?
Wow.
Or just the numerous foot stomps that she kind of does?
I'm trying to think. I think the maddest she's ever been was like after we won the championship, we got in some trouble, some college trouble, which I won't mention here, but I think that was probably as mad as I've ever seen her. Yeah, we got in some like, normal 18-year-old kid trouble, but we were a basketball player, so that made everything worse. So that's probably the most I've ever seen her.
Yeah. And then lastly, what's the hardest class you ever took at Maryland?
Hardest class? I don't know if they
or
still
the
have
most
that.
interesting was
English 101, all those like writing classes. Do they still have that annoying class where everyone failed and you have to get an A in to like have to do the second class? You guys know what I'm talking about? I actually got an A in that class, but I suffered miserably. I know, because I didn't want to do that second class. So I was like, how do I get out of this thing? That was probably the hardest thing to me is thank God for ChatGPT now. Like, you don't have to write anymore. Yeah.
Now you're insulting our livelihoods. Come on now. We don't want to talk about that. That's hilarious. Well, thank you. Yeah, no kidding. But thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it, especially I'm sure in your busy schedule. Appreciate you telling us all those cool stories. So thanks again. Well, that was Shay talking about the past women's basketball team, but we're in the current season for Terps basketball as well. Maryland is on the hardwood recently, went to Cancun over the Thanksgiving break, much warmer than my Thanksgiving break trip down to Old Michigan. Probably, what do you guys think, 60-degree, 70-degree temperature difference there. But they had an okay week, lost to Washington State, who's ranked. Kind of a weird game, Mike. They got off to a really hot start, probably played their best quarter of the season, and then just fell apart down the stretch, ended up losing by 20. And then they beat Green Bay, Wisconsin, which might not sound like an impressive win, but Green Bay, Wisconsin has wins over two ranked teams this year. They beat Wazoo, and then they also beat Creighton. So that win could come back to kind of help out Maryland's resume at the end of the year, and then they destroyed in their final game. I can't even remember who they played. So
come on, they played UMass.
Oh, there you go. 2-1 week.
I think you actually knew. You were just trying to insult me.
Yeah, I was trolling there. 2-1 week for Maryland and Brenda Freese's team. Mike, what did you see from them over there, and what were some of your big takeaways?
I thought that the Wazoo loss had shades of UConn and South Carolina to it. A lot of the same strong start, couldn't finish it out, kind of flailed out at the end. But look, they're going through early season struggles with a team that looks a lot different than last year. They lost their top two scorers that we've talked about, and then they have three players right now in their top 8 minutes of played that weren't on the team last year. So it's going to take a while for them to mesh together, and it's good that they're going through these early season lumps now rather than later in the tough Big Ten schedule that they're going to face.
Yeah, I think that you talked about the new players. I think that they really got to start relying on them more. I think that Bree McDaniel needs to be playing 30-plus minutes a night at this point. I mean, she's been, I would say one of their top 3 players.
Consistently.
I mean, really.
Defensively, offensively.
She's their best secondary ball handler behind Shy. She needs to see the floor more. I think Riley Nelson needs to see the floor more. She kind of finally started getting going. She played 20-plus minutes in all 3 games. And that might come at the expense of some veterans. I mean, Lavender Briggs, she's been here. I don't think she's going anywhere in terms of like rotation minutes, but at the end of the day, she had that great first half against Washington State, but she's not performing up to snuff. She's averaging 6 points a game on 32% or 33% field goal shooting. Not great, not shooting it very well from behind the arc either, 27%. And then Faith Masonis is also kind of taking a dip in minutes at the expense of Allie Kubek. So
I think that Freeze is still kind of sorting out the rotations, but Brendan, I think it would pay her some benefit to kind of stick with maybe some of the young guns. Even if it might come with some low lows, I think it might have some high highs.
And then one thing I want to note out is that entering the Cancun Challenge, the freshmen were averaging only 15 minutes a game collectively as a whole. Those past 3 games in Mexico, that number ballooned up to 44 minutes per game. So you kind of see Freeze kind of experimenting more with lineups. A lot of what's going on with the men's team right now, too, where they're still trying to figure out who meshes well with who on the court.
Yeah, I think that before we move on to the men's side, I think one caveat to point out is it's 3 games in 3 days. And you talked to Brenda before the tournament, and she said, yeah, we're going to have to rely on the bench. So I agree with you that I think that the freshmen are going to continue to play more, but I also think I want to see it in a normal game schedule where, like, okay, are you really playing Riley at that 15 to 20 minute range, or is that just because players are getting tired? So it'll be interesting to see. They have a week coming up here, Niagara, and then George Mason, who's off to a really good start, 7-0. So 2-0 would be a good week.
Yeah, you mentioned the upcoming schedule. The one thing I wanted to ask you guys about is, I haven't studied this team nearly as close as you guys and with the future opponents. When do you think their next loss is?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that
I could see them winning 7 or 8 or 9 games.
Yeah, I think they're going to rip off a couple here just because of the schedule. But I think that you kind of look at potential trap games. I mean, George Mason, I think, could give them some trouble. But then I think that first road game, Nebraska and Lincoln, I think is going to be kind of your biggest test. That's December 31st, though, so still over a month away.
And then one that they got
game.
Next ranked matchup they got circled down on their calendar, January 17th against number 16 Ohio State.
Yeah, so that'll be a big game.
I think it's possible they don't lose till then, honestly.
Yeah, no, totally. They got a couple of road games, so you always know in the Big Ten, but if they can play how they did in the last part, I think they're on the upswing, and they're shooting it. They got to shoot it better, and that's a common theme across basketball in College Park. The men's team, guys, I don't really know. This is the weird thing I have with the men's team. If they could just shoot averagely, that's not a word, but if they just shot the ball average from 3, they'd be a decent team.
Even slightly below average.
Slightly below average. They are just one of the worst shooting teams in college basketball. They rank in like the 300s for 3-point field goal percentage. It's not good. I mean, Mike, I want to ask you, before the season, you said you thought the 3-point shooting would improve. What's been the biggest change in kind of like what you thought versus what the reality is?
Jamie Kaiser, he was brought in, expected to be, a threat from 3-point land. He's shooting 13%. Deshaun Smith-Harris, I don't know if he can hit a 3-point shot. He's shooting 5.6%. Harris Smith, correct me. And then Jonathan Lamont, freshman from St. Francis. People expected him to be a big-time scoring threat, and 0% from 3. I don't even think
not playing, really.
He's not even on the court. So
yeah, I think also you don't even look at the young guys, but also the veterans. I mean, Donta Scott is not shooting it very well. Jameer, I think, has been solid, but it's not like he's lighting it up from deep, shooting 29%. Danta's at 37, but, he really kind of put it together the last game, or else that number would be low. And then Jordan Geronimo, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't see it in the starting lineup. I think they eventually have to go to either Bachelor, which is crazy to say.
And they put Bachelor in and for that 3-point shooting. And what's he shooting right now?
3 of 14, 21%. So they need a 5th starter bad, and I don't know where they're going to find it, but it has to come soon.
Deshaun Harris Smith, the 3-point totals are crazy, right?
Yeah,
his makes to
he's 1
attempts.
for 18.
Yeah, yuck.
It seems like anybody they're putting in that 5th starter role just hasn't had enough confidence to keep the role.
Yeah, no,
they get it in the game, they're like, oh, this is great, I'm starting a game finally. But they don't play well enough to keep it, so they're just a rotation at this point.
That's a great
point. Which
is
not a way to be a winning basketball team.
No, 100%. If you're constantly cycling out that 5th spot, then it's kind of negative. I think it's just like when you have one player shooting above 30% from 3, you're just not, and they're not like great defensively, right? Like, fine, you might just be a grinded out team, but I mean, Villanova played well on offense against them. Davidson scored 64 points. UAB scored 66. Obviously Villanova only scored 57, but Villanova's a grinded out, team. So I think that, when you look at it that way, not necessarily positive signs in College Park. They'll beat Rider on Tuesday handedly, and then you kind of look at another team that can't shoot from three, Indiana. So that'll be a brick fest down in Bloomington probably. But knowing what we say, both teams will go like 40% from deep. Do you guys think they have any chance in that one?
No.
I actually think they could win. I think Indiana's a little overrated. Jordan Geronimo revenge game. People are talking.
I think it's a winnable game.
You do?
I do, but I think if Maryland plays like they played against Villanova, they'll have the same result.
Yeah. Well, I think if Maryland plays like they did against Villanova against any Big Ten team, they're probably losing. But I think that I agree with you. I think that they have a chance. They're going to have to play a lot better. They're going to have to neutralize, Indiana's guard. Xavier Johnson's a good player. They have Khalil Ware, who's a solid big man. I think really, and not even just beyond the shooting, they got to get the ball to Julian Reese more. I mean, he's got to take that leap that everyone was talking about before the season. Right now, it just foul trouble. His free-throw shooting is still just such an issue. I mean,
despite the fact that Willard has been very high on it, and they talk about how he plays.
Yeah, I mean, he's shooting 59%. Like, he's like
somehow better than Deshaun Harris-Smith, though.
Yeah, I don't know really. DHS, it's interesting.
The one thing I know you guys have probably looked at the score and the box score from the South Alabama game, and people have been talking about it, but only 4 players scored. Do you guys see that? I mean,
it's
that's
just
not a formula to success.
And
at
we
all.
talked all year about this team. Oh, they have better depth. They have better depth. Maybe we were just way off in like who's a big. But I know Jahari Long is a solid role player on it. He did it last year. The guy Jamie Kaiser should be better than Patrick Emilion. Like,
I agree, and I think we underestimate those people a lot. Ian Martinez, was he awesome? It's hard to say.
Hakeem Hart, massive loss for them.
Who was saying that? That's all.
I actually have it in my notes somewhere that I was crediting you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just missed that connector that Hakeem was. And then they don't have a backup big man either. Like, we talked about it all, like Caleb Swanton, Roger, and Matty Troy. They're not playing great. Like, neither of them has been
or playing enough
excellent
to know if they're good or not.
To know if they're good, exactly, B. So I think that, and then, Julian's getting in foul trouble. So it's like, it's just kind of a weird spot that they're in where they have the makings of a good team. They're just not there yet. I don't know. I don't really know what to make of this. Like the women's team, I feel like I have a good sense of where they're at, right?
The women's team, it's good. They're good, but not great at this point.
Yeah, like I think I know what the ceiling is for that team. I think I also know that they're probably going to figure it out. The men's team, I think they could figure it out and like come in third in the Big Ten. I also think that they could completely flop and miss the tournament at this point.
It's just very surprising. This was a team that you thought had the potential to be Final Four caliber, all the pieces with the veterans and then a talented freshman class, but
yeah,
shooting has not been there.
No,
they lack the energy. They lack the spark. Like the team from last year, when you'd watch those Maryland games, you'd be like, wow, this team is playing because they wanted more.
Yeah, I mean,
we haven't seen that yet, but also I think they haven't played a game at home where the crowd's been going crazy. So
definitely. I think this, if they can pull it out against Indiana, that kind of balances out the resume. You kind of like would flop it around. But
we talked about those 2 losses are 1 possession losses at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, exactly. So they got to figure it out. Villanova does look good though. They beat North Carolina pretty handedly. So
one thing that won't help them though is that they have a lot of games over winter break where there won't be students in the stands. That you're talking about having that energy and being able to feed off of it.
Yep.
Number 1, Purdue, the College Park, January 2nd. How many students are going to be in the student section?
I'm sure the players will be here.
I will. Yeah, so we'll get into that at a later date. Obviously, 2-0 week would kind of be massive for the Terps as their season kind of kicks into full swing here. And one team that's on the way out, the football squad, Maryland football, the new Big Ten all-time leading passer. I'm not going to lie, guys. I saw that stat, and I was floored. I had no idea that he was that close. I knew he was like breaking.
I mean, we all knew it was coming after the Michigan game, but before the Michigan game, I had no idea.
I had no idea. Yeah, I was just like, and even I knew it was coming, but when I saw it, I just like had to read it. I'm like, how does Maryland have the all-time leading passer? I mean, they joined the conference in 2012, 2010, and Big Ten's been around for like 140 years. So, I mean,
I wouldn't stat Sam on either of those, but yeah.
Yeah, no. Credit. Look up Brandon Schwartzberg's Twitter. He had it, but I think that's a pretty. I mean, you can crown that in the program. I think it also brings up the question. I don't really need to talk necessarily. I think about the Rutgers game. Like they played good, they won. Like it was kind of just same old.
Classic Maryland Rutgers game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
My question to you, and before we kind of move off of football, or is, Taylor Lyons wrote a piece in the Diamondback about Talia Tagovailoa's legacy.
I think every writer in history wrote it. I saw it.
There was like 8 pieces about it. But I thought Taylor specifically did a really good job of kind of surmising what Talia means to the program and where he faulted and where he kind of excelled. First of all, did you guys read the piece? I know Mike did. And then second of all, what do you think about what does he leave here at Maryland? Like, where does he stack up? We don't have to talk about rankings because at the end of the day, but just when you
can't really compare him.
Yeah,
when such different
eras. Yeah, but when you think of Talia, 5-10 years from now, what do you think Maryland fans are going to think of him?
He was a QB that led Maryland in a time where the program improved and saw heights that they had not seen in a while. I mean, I was doing some research earlier today. Maryland has never had a starting QB lead 3 straight winning seasons in either the ACC or the Big Ten.
Wow.
That just kind of puts it into perspective how successful Maryland was in Talia's tenure. And yes, he didn't have the signature win against an Ohio State or a Michigan, but he gave the program 3 straight winning seasons, something they did not do since 2003 under Ralph Friedgen. That cannot be ignored.
No, I think that's a good point. Brendan, what do you think about it?
I think in terms of Big Ten perspective, he took the team from pretty bad to competitive. I know Loxley said that Maryland was going to compete for Big Ten championships, which they're obviously not at that level yet. And with the way the Big Ten is going to be having all the new teams, Maryland will not be competing for Big Ten championships anytime soon. But they are competitive in the Big Ten. They finished the best they can finish in the East, and they, I talked about it earlier that their Big Ten record hasn't been that good. But if you look back at what it was before Talia arrived, it was even worse. So I think, took the team from bad to competitive. But I think so many Maryland fans will look at it and be like, what if Talia hadn't made X mistake on X play? But overall, change the program.
I think it's going to be one of those things where I don't know what the QB situation is going to be yet. We can talk about that at a later time. But next season we might be seeing Billy Edwards at starting QB. And
why don't they just run that play every single?
Fans are going to have a little bit of a reality check to how valuable Talia's arm was.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see next year and we talked about this in a prior episode, if Leah is the reason that Loxley's scheme works, or is Loxley's scheme be in spite of quarterbacks? Like, can he make it work with a variety of guys? Or is it just Talia who kind of, puts them across? And
kind of building off of that, when we interviewed Friedgen, he said that whenever he had a good starting quarterback, Maryland was good and the team played well. So I think,
Yeah, no, I think that next year is going to be fascinating for that. And just to kind of wrap up on Talia, I think that you both kind of, in a way, summarized like my thoughts. I think that on one hand, Talia got Maryland to a place that they desperately needed to get to, right? Like, he was the steadying ship kind of, was a 3-year guy, came in, kind of brought Maryland back to the level that I think fans wanted. But I think once they hit that point, he wasn't good enough to get them across that line. And I think that it was almost like they were just banging their head against the top of the, like, middle to second class of the Big Ten, and they just could never break through, right? And at the end of the day, as stupid as it is, quarterbacks are defined by their big wins. And if you can, I can't think of one notable Talia Tagovailoa, performance in a game. Like Ohio State last year, that's probably the best one he had, a win against a terrible Penn State team in a COVID season, right? Like, I think at the end of the day, he was the quarterback who stabilized the program, but he wasn't the quarterback who was going to take the program to the next step. And I think that that's just kind of where you're at in terms of his legacy, in my opinion.
But do you think if he was on in Ohio State or Michigan, those teams would have the same success?
I don't think he would be. No, I don't think, personally, I think, if you put him on Michigan, I think, J.J. McCarthy would still start. I think if you put him on Ohio State, Kyle McCord probably would still start. So, I think Talia is a top 5 Big Ten quarterback, top 3 Big Ten quarterback. He makes a lot of great plays. He also makes crushing errors that good teams don't make, right? Like, I'm sorry, you had a chance to win it against Michigan. At the end of the day, the defense did enough. He had 3 drives where that could have been Talia's legacy drive, right? Like, they go down and score a touchdown in that game. Talia, that's what he can bank his, success on. I beat number 2 Michigan at home, and I was the one to take it across the finish line. intentional grounding, takes a sack, stuff that,
fumble in the beginning of the game.
Partly out of his control, but at the end of the day, if you want to be remembered as like this quarterback who kind of broke the program through, you have to finish games. So I think it's unfair, but at the same time, that's just kind of the reality of the position.
Yeah, I mean, to wrap it up, I often also wonder what the Maryland offense would look like if it looked, a little bit different, kind of what it looked like in his first couple of years where he just ran the ball a lot more for kind of the injury in the middle of last year and just the previous years where different offense coordinator, but
right.
Who's to say? Okay, looking ahead, bowl game, Maryland has one more game left on their schedule.
Yeah.
Las Vegas Bowl,
that's
Music City
where
Bowl. I think it's one of the two.
Yeah, I think
that would be a big success.
Las Vegas Bowl against the brand of USC. I don't think Caleb Williams would play, but the brand would do a lot for Maryland. I think
just a Big Ten game,
especially classic Big Ten rivalry.
Just a Big Ten regular season game. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would do a lot for Maryland.
I don't know if they can take either Music City Bowl because that's at LSU or Texas A&M, or USC Utah and Las Vegas Bowl. However, Talia has said that he will play in the bowl game. So
is he going to get randomly benched for a play like last year? But yeah, I think either of those you're more than happy to play, and I think those are relatively solid bowl games. And if they can pull off a win against a LSU or a USC, I don't care who's playing or who's not playing for the other team. Maryland will hype that win up beyond belief. I mean, that will be plastered across every TBIAF, like anything that is Maryland football related. They will use that, and they should.
And that's not necessarily bad.
No, they should. I mean, that's a national brand that they beat if it were to happen. So I'll be interested to see where they land.
So I guess in the midst of that losing streak, we're all talking about, is the season a success or not? Now after Rutgers, now the regular season is at a close. Would you call the season a success? Was it a failure? How would you grade the season?
C-.
B-.
I would say fine, you don't win against Penn State, Michigan, or Ohio State. Losing to Illinois and Northwestern is unacceptable.
That's what I was about to say. The Illinois loss I can somewhat understand because it's in the hangover of the Ohio State game, and but losing to Northwestern is just. That's a crushing blow.
Northwestern finished pretty well, actually.
But at the end of the day, like if you want to be that program that talks, you can't talk about Big Ten championships and then lose to Northwestern and consider it a winning season, in my opinion. But you had a better grade, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think they still had another winning season, and so that you got to take that as a positive a little bit.
Yeah. I just have a different. I guess maybe I'm just biased to like a different perspective because I came into it like only knowing Maryland football. I knew them, but I didn't really watch Maryland football until I got here.
Yeah.
And they've had this mediocre season, so you hold it to that standard, I guess.
Just one more thing on the bowl game. You talked about Maryland, loving to play against one of those, brands and such and stuff like that. Do you think that USC, Utah, LSU, Texas A&M would care at all to play Maryland? Do you think that Maryland's brand holds any weight out there?
They're probably viewed from the outside as a mediocre Big Ten program who got a bunch of cupcake wins at the beginning of the season, if we're being honest.
Yeah. No, I would probably agree with Mike, but they don't really have much say in the matter. So
that's very true.
So then as football kind of wraps up, so does volleyball. We're kind of finishing up with the fall sports here. We'll hit this really quick here. Lost to, finished out the season 17-15, 7-13 in conference, 1-7 versus the ranked teams. Adam Hughes will not make the tournament yet again. Brennan, just quick hitter. What does this season mean, and what does it mean for next year for Hughes?
I'd be shocked if he doesn't come back. I mean,
yeah, he's here.
He's been talking about it and getting his players to want to play to just be better than 500 and play to have winning records in the Big Ten. And those things are, I think those things are only going to happen if you give them a couple more years to continue building. I mean, Maryland's going to lose people and had a bit of roster issues in the middle of people just not playing and transferring. But I think this season is I'll give it I just gave it the B-. I'll give it another B-. I think not incredible. Didn't make the tournament. Didn't really make that much of a splash in the Big Ten. 1-7 against ranked teams, but we've talked about it. Very difficult conference, and so to get 3 wins against ranked teams is just not that realistic if you're not one of them.
I need you to be my journalism 320 professor with these fortunate grades you're handing out here. But yeah, the volleyball team, I think we can all agree Hughes probably back, but a big year for him in 2024.
It's a make or break year for Hughes, I'd say.
Yeah, I think, and next year we can get into that.
I think Mike will say that on the podcast
Every
year, every game, every set, every point that Hughes plays.
Yeah, exactly. But volleyball wraps up, and that's from one pavilion sport to the final sport we're going to be talking about today, the wrestling squad. Lost to number 22 Pitt, but beat American University. They were actually ranked number 22 before the loss. Brendan, this team's got some pieces, I would say. Alex Clemson's squad, not necessarily, I feel like, talent drained as they have been in years past. What do you think about them?
They're going to be all right. I mean, starting the season ranked is great for the...
But rankings are so weird in wrestling, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of interesting. Because I was talking to people who like cover the wrestling team, and it's like there's so many different rankings, and none of them are very verified. Just
for the updated rankings, they don't come out that often, but I'm guessing that Pitt will be around 19 for when they come out next week.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they were. Vegas invite coming up this weekend. A lot of Maryland action in Vegas, possibly in the next couple of weeks. Nathan Miller looking strong, like you mentioned it, but. I think we'll have to just wait a couple weeks and kind of see where these people all wrestle out and, where Clemson decides to put them before we can, make it.
Yeah. Non-conference in wrestling, I feel like, is all just about gauging where your individuals are at right before the especially before, more so than any other sport.
Getting people reps early in the season.
Exactly. So, wrestling team off to Vegas, off to the Sin City, where there will be no gambling, hopefully, from the team, but we will be gambling on the picks section. Mike, provide us with the updates in our, second to last pick segment of the week.
Still, Sam is up at the top, 23 and 16. Then Brendan, 17, 21 and 1, and then me at the bottom. That pesky little push there, 17 and 22. You're lucky, Brendan.
Yeah, another 2-1 week for me, so I'll get us started. Championship weekend, guys. There's a ton of good games. I feel like this championship weekend has more good games than years past. Like Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, Washington, even Florida State, Louisville, I think is going to be pretty entertaining. So I'll start it off with probably the best game of the weekend. Oregon minus 9.5 against Washington. This line makes absolutely zero sense. Washington beat Oregon, right? You would think they would be potentially favored. Nope, they're nearly 10-point underdogs. But Oregon is playing like one of the best teams in the country. I think they low-key might be the best team in the country.
And I've said that about Washington. So
look at that. That's why we're going against each other this week. I'm going to have them in a blowout game against the Huskies, and then I'm going to take the over in that game as well. I like that in terms of that game being high scoring. And then finally, I'm going to go against them. I was at the Michigan-Ohio State game. Pretty incredible. I'm going to take Michigan minus 23 against Iowa.
I did not see that you also had Iowa plus 23, so I'm going to change my pick. I'm going to go on the Michigan-Iowa over.
My God, an Iowa game going over? Be my guest.
That's a Michael House pick.
Michigan's a very good team. Then after that, I'm going to take Louisville plus 2.5 against Florida State. They were struggling a little bit against Florida without Jordan Travis. It's only going to get harder with Louisville in the ACC championship. And then I'm going to take Oklahoma State, Texas over 54.5. I think this is going to be a high-scoring championship game.
Big 12.
I love the Louisville pick. That's a great pick. Mm-hmm. Okay. Tulane minus 3.5 against SMU. Tulane blew them out at the beginning of the year. I don't see why that wouldn't happen again. And then in the first Big Ten championship, I will take Iowa plus 23 against Michigan. I'm not sure Michigan will score 23 points if you've looked at the way Iowa's played against teams. They did up a bunch of points against Penn State, but Iowa the past couple weeks has looked like the best defense ever in football. So.
Do you want to know a crazy stat?
Hit me with it.
Michigan has scored 31 points or less than 31 points once this entire season. Iowa has scored more than 31 points once this entire season. So definitely
bit of polar opposites.
Yeah. I don't hate that pick.
We'll see what happens. And then in the second Big Ten championship game, I will take Washington plus 9.5 against Oregon. It's technically, I think they're calling it the Pac-12 championship game, but it's really a Big Ten championship game.
A classic Big Ten
that
rivalry.
Line makes no sense, right? Because Washington's undefeated.
Oregon's
Oregon's only loss is to Washington. You'd think it would be a close game. The line makes you think that Oregon is going to blow them out. So I do somewhat like your pick, Sam, but I've been rooting for Washington,
I like Washington. I really do. I think
And
that
they've won every game. So, they've been playing a lot of close games, but at the end of the day, they've won those games. So it's hard to say.
this year I think is the one year where I feel like an 8-team or 12-team playoff would be good because like Oregon and Washington both should make the playoff. Texas should make the playoff.
Alabama should make it.
Stop.
What do you mean stop?
That's terrible.
Ohio State probably should make it. So like I'm somewhat glad they're going to 12 next year. Then it'll be an electric college football playoff game in CQ Stadium.
Some of the rankings are insane. They have Missouri over Penn State. There's no way you're telling me Penn State is not as good as Missouri football.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. But those are the picks for the week. We'll cap it off here with Terrific Terp. Brendan, take us away.
Let's do it. This week's Terrific Terp is more well known for his LGBTQ advocacy than his time on the mat at the University of Maryland. Hudson Taylor was a force to be reckoned with in College Park. He's the only 3-time All-American wrestler in the history of Maryland wrestling, holds the Maryland record for career falls with 87, and won ACC Wrestler of the Year twice. Not so bad. Hudson attended Maryland from 2005 to 2009 and was one of the most dominant wrestlers in the ACC. However, unlike most in the wrestling community, he majored in interactive performing arts, where he became friends with many people in the LGBTQ community. However, Taylor himself was straight and became a powerful straight ally. He began wearing an LGBTQ equity sticker while wrestling on his headgear. While he faced backlash from some peers, he gained support over email from many closeted athletes across the country. His two worlds on the mat and on stage were in complete opposites. On the theater side, Taylor had friends and classmates coming out and being accepted and welcome. But on the mat, homophobia was more prevalent. This experience led him to launch Athlete Ally, which encourages and empowers straight allies to combat homophobia and transphobia. Taylor was named the Maryland Alumnus of the Year in 2012 for his work as an LGBTQ rights activist. His work advocating for the LGBTQ community gained national attention and just enough attention to be this week's Terrific Terp.
Another good one from Brendan, and that'll wrap it up. I mean, that's what I like about Terrific Terp. Like, you kind of get into the off-the-mat stuff, and I had no idea that was a Maryland alum. I knew of that organization, but that takes a special type of cat to get that started. So, great way to cap off another episode. We're back from the break, and sports are kicking into full gear here around College Park. So make sure you tune in to all of our episodes. Follow us on social media at Under the Shell, and have a good rest of your evening.
Guess what? You've got Under the Shell podcast. Nobody does it better.